En honor de Böhm-Bawerk,
In honor of Böhm-Bawerk, let us consider the same market he does in his classic work Capital and Interest. Böhm-Bawerk looks at a market for horses, where presumably there are buyers and sellers interested in buying and selling horses, viewed as a scarce and also homogeneous economic good. At the time he was writing, horses were the standard means of transportation. It would be like looking at the car market today.
Vale, entonces vamos a recordar
Okay,
la lección
now
esencial.
let us recall the essential lesson from the other day about the circumstances conducive to exchanges. For any exchange to take place, there must be inequality in opposite subjective valuations between the parties who will potentially close the deal. So we will imagine the following scenario. There are two economic agents, two gentlemen, Mr. A and Mr. B. Well, Mr. A does not have a horse and is thinking of buying one. The subjective valuations on his value scale are as follows. He subjectively values the horse he does not have more than 300 monetary units he does have. Let's say, for example, that I'm Mr. A and I want to buy a horse, and the following condition exists in me. I subjectively value, and you know that subjective valuations can only be compared, they are not a cardinal dimension which can be measured. Anyway, 300 euros, or monetary units of whatever currency, are worth less to me than the horse I want to buy. Thus, my question is, if this condition exists in me, if I value the horse I want to buy more than 300 monetary units, do I value the horse more than 299? And more than 250? Obviously. And more than 200? Yes.
Pero vamos a suponer que el límite máximo en el que llego hasta
But let's suppose that the upper limit, the maximum amount at which the money, the monetary units, are worth less to me than the horse, is 300. Because if I add one more monetary unit, 301, then the scales are reversed. Well, if this inequality in subjective valuations exists in me, we will summarize it by saying that Mr. A values at 300 monetary units the horse he wants to buy. In today's class, and from this point on, when I say Mr. A values the horse at 300, you must associate that with these two inequalities in subjective valuations. To put it another way, the potential buyer of the horse is willing to pay up to 300 monetary units, but no more. Okay? Now, we are going to suppose there is a potential seller of the horse, someone, Mr. B, who has a horse. Well, it turns out that 100 monetary units, which he lacks, are subjectively worth more to him than the horse. Now, the inverse of the question I asked before is this. If 100 monetary units are worth more to him than the horse he has, are 110 monetary units worth more? Yes. How about 150 or 200? But we will suppose that the lower limit is 100 monetary units. That is, if one unit is subtracted, 99, then the balance shifts. Man, 99 euros I don't have are worth less to me than the horse. If these two inequalities in subjective valuations exist in Mr. B, the potential seller, we will say that he values his horse at 100. To put it another way, he is willing to sell it for 100 monetary units, but not for less.
Bueno, pues vamos a estudiar ahora el primer caso, que es el que tenemos que entender bien.
Well, now we are going to consider the first case, which we must understand well, and that is the case of price determination in an isolated exchange. An isolated exchange is one which involves only one potential buyer and only one potential seller. Let us ask ourselves the following question. If these inequalities in subjective valuations exist in the minds of Mr. A and Mr. B, in short, if Mr. A is willing to pay up to 300 monetary units for the horse he wants to buy, and Mr. B, who has the horse, is willing to sell it for 100 or more, the first question we could ask ourselves is, will an exchange take place? What was the necessary condition for an exchange to occur? We said that there must be inequality in opposite subjective valuations, that each party must attach a higher subjective value to what he lacks and the other party has than what he has and expects to give in the exchange. Does that situation exist here? Obviously it does. So the first condition for an exchange to occur is met. There is inequality in subjective valuations here. In short, Mr. A is very eager to buy the horse, and he is willing to offer a lot, up to 300 monetary units. And Mr. B is very eager to obtain monetary units. He is willing to sell his horse for even as little as 100 monetary units. There is inequality in subjective valuations, and hence the first necessary condition for an exchange to occur is already met. However, there is a second essential condition, our good friend entrepreneurship, which is represented by the entrepreneurial light bulb. Both parties must recognize the profit opportunity. They must realize they both come out ahead if they reach a deal, for in a society based on contractual ties, exchanges are voluntary, and they take place if and only if both parties benefit from a deal. Here it is clear that they stand to benefit, because an inequality in subjective valuations exists, but the parties must notice the profit opportunity, detect it, recognize it, discover it, seize it entrepreneurially, realize there is a profit opportunity, and then swing into action. What does action consist of? It consists precisely of closing the deal. So the answer to the first question is, yes, an exchange will take place, because there is inequality in subjective valuations, as long as the parties are alert enough from an entrepreneurial standpoint to recognize that profit opportunity. Now, what is the second question we could ask ourselves? At what price will the deal be closed? Maybe to answer this question, at what price the deal will be closed, we could split it into two different questions. I ask you, could this deal be closed at a price higher than 300 monetary units per horse? Obviously not, because the potential buyer is willing to pay up to 300 monetary units, but no more. Next question. Could the deal be closed at a price lower than 100 monetary units? The answer is no again, this time because of the seller, who is willing to sell a horse for 100 monetary units or more, but for no less. Well, all we can say as economists, in terms of economic theory, is that in an isolated exchange, under these circumstances, the deal will be closed and at a price somewhere between 100 monetary units, the subjective valuation the potential seller makes of the horse, and 300 monetary units, the subjective valuation the potential buyer makes of the horse. The most we can say is that clearly a deal will be reached, if the parties entrepreneurially discover the profit opportunity. Because there is inequality in opposite subjective valuations, and that the price will be between 100 and 300, between the subjective valuations the potential seller makes and the subjective valuation the potential buyer makes. Within the broad range between 100 and 300, where specifically will the price be set? We cannot say a priori in terms of economic theory. The most we can say is that it will depend on the shrewdness and entrepreneurial capacity of each person involved in the deal, on the entrepreneurial and negotiating ability of each of the people who take part in the exchange. If the capacity of both is more or less similar, we could theorize, form a hypothesis that the price will lie about halfway between 100 and 300, 200 monetary units for example, but there is no guarantee.
Pero no hay ninguna seguridad.